big is that? I can see it all. So, yeah, it's here. What? Yeah. And it's under, it's something now, it's got underneath the only. It's all, it's all, it's bars. It's like, you know, the seven time. Yes. This is where I was. So it's sort of on the shoulder. Yeah. Navigator. I mean, goodness sakes. After the sign is. Yeah. We're supposed to answer that. I don't want to. I really think the good time. Yeah. And I, something we got.
How's it gonna get to you?
Oh, it has, I just want, I just say.
But I can't let you into them. You know, I don't want you to grab it.
Okay. You want that? And that's,
T. Davis.
Can you send it to it's and you get some download. That's gonna be just and it wasn't green. Yeah,
Elizabeth in the conference room. She had another meeting, so she's there. But it's.
Okay, cool. There's no one ready. Are we? Welcome, everybody, to the December 14th meeting of the Architectural Review Board and the Seaside Planning Commission. We are going to start by calling the meeting to order. And will you do a roll call vote for us, please, or a roll call?
Commissioner Montreal.
Present.
Commissioner Nguyen.
Present.
Commissioner Evans.
Present.
Commissioner Lamica.
Present.
Commissioner Owens. Commissioner Dodson.
Present.
And Chair Silva.
Present.
You do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Is this a little louder than normal? There's feedback. I don't know if we can dial it down or something, but all right. Establishing a quorum. We start with our item number 3, which is the review of the agenda. If there are any items that have arisen after the 72-hour posting deadline, this is the point in the meeting where a vote may be taken to add an item to the agenda. Do we have any items?
No items
No
have been
items,
brought to the attention of staff.
All right. Item number 4 is public comment for commissions. This is a time when members of the public wishing to address the commission on matters within the jurisdiction of City of Seaside, but not on this agenda, may do so during the public comment period for up to 3 minutes. If you have a comment that's on a specific agenda item that we're going to hear later, please hold your comments for that time period. Is there anybody in the audience or online? We'll check for raised hands.
Members of the public in the chamber, please approach the podium. Members of the public on Zoom for public comment, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're calling from a phone. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment.
All right, seeing none, we're going to close that and move to item number 5, which is our approval of the minutes from our October 26, 2022 meeting. Do we have any comments from other commissioners on the minutes? Okay, do we want to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of
Six. All right, second. All right. And we don't need a roll call on this, right? So all in favor? Aye. Any abstentions, say for people who weren't here? Okay, and there's no vote, so approved unanimously. All right, number 6 is our business items, and the first item to come before us is use permit number UP 22-07 and Board of Architectural Review application number BAR 22-12. Jeremy Coulter, property owner, is requesting a use permit for 2 exterior stairways and an above ground deck projecting 6 feet into required setbacks. And Board of Architectural Review for a proposed second story deck of approximately 927 square feet at 1442 Wanda Avenue. Let's turn it over to staff for our presentation. Thank you.
Testing. Good evening, Planning Commission, members of the public and members in the chambers. My name is Jose Torres. I'm the Associate Planner. I'm here to review and present to you UP 22-07 and BAR 22-12. Is it this button? Oh, I don't know. I always have trouble with that one. Thank you. Next slide. So the purpose for our meeting tonight is to consider the design review for a deck, an outdoor deck, which includes architectural improvements, including 2 exterior stairways, which would lead to a second floor. Both of these stairways in the rear and in the front and the rear of the property will project slightly into the setbacks. Both of these need to be reviewed by Planning Commission for a use permit. Furthermore, the architectural review is required for any second story elements. And next slide. So this is our location site. The address is 1442 Wanda. It's a corner lot at the corner of Wanda and Flores Street, Wanda Avenue. It's in the RS12 zoning district. The lot is approximately 3,600 square feet. The primary dwelling is approximately 3,750 square feet, and the lot coverage is under the maximum allowed. So the proposed project, again, is a 920-foot square deck that will wrap around 3 sides of the property. The property is surrounded by 3 single-family dwellings. Next slide, please. So I'll walk through the floor plan. Can you click twice again? Yeah, it's up here one more time. So we can see the location of the red arrows are the 15-foot setbacks in the front and in the rear. And the yellow rectangles are where the new stairways will be located. In the front, it projects about 3 feet, and in the back, about a foot into the setback. The side setback is met 5 feet. And we can move on to the next slide. So findings for the use permit. Number 1, the proposed use is allowed within the applicable zone. It complies with all other applicable provisions in the zoning ordinance and the municipal code. Number 2, the proposed use is consistent with the general plan and any applicable specific plans which don't exist at this moment in this zone. Number 3, the design, location, size, operating characteristics, the proposed activity are compatible with the existing land uses and future land uses of the vicinity. Number 4, the site is physically suitable for this type of density and intensity that is being proposed, including access, utilities, and absence of the physical constraints. Number 5, the granting of this permit would not be detrimental to the health and public well-being of the community. This is a, oh, thank you. We can, this is a 2-story deck that would comply with all these findings. So onto the elevations, we'll focus on the north elevation, and this, I guess, doesn't work. So if you know, the north elevation is where the front entrance of the home is, and currently the front door is on the northwest side to the right of the chimney, which is center to the facade of the house. And if we go to the next, the west and the south are the elevations that are facing the neighboring properties, single family dwellings. We can go to the next one. So the proposed elevation shows specifically the top image shows what the design would look like with the existing stairway is going to be shifted to the left of the chimney to give it a more balanced feel for the entire front facade of the front lot. And in the northwest corner where the existing entrance was, will be 2 sets of double doors, which we'll review in a little bit. That will give a little more space for activities in that corner. Those doors lead to the kitchen and dining area in the front. And we can move on to the next slide. So this is a typical framing image for those doors. Again, these are paintable vinyl doors that will be installed on the existing current existing entrance, leading to the dining and kitchen areas. Next slide. This is an example of the front door will be custom built by the owner, and the 2 double doors that we just reviewed. This is an example of what those would be like. This is an example of that was provided of what the owner envisions the finished deck to look like, a cedar deck. And in the next image, we'll see an example of the railing. And next slide. Windows all around will be all throughout the second floor will be replaced at varying sizes. And the light fixtures that don't exist currently will be installed at all the entryways, doors, and windows. As you can see, they're shielded and light is pointing downward. And we do have a condition of approval for lighting that we'll review in the next slide. Actually, we'll review where the location of the lights are first. So this is the yellow circles indicate where lighting will be placed. It currently doesn't exist there. And next slide. So the condition of approval to ensure the light doesn't have an effect on the neighbors, position of lighting fixtures shall be properly directed and fully shielded and recessed to avoid glare onto the adjacent properties, ensuring the light source is not visible from off-site and confining it to the maximum extent feasible. So our recommendation is to approve use permit 22-07 and bar 22-12, subject to the attachment 1 resolution and project plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it a bunch.
Yes.
At this time, if the owner or the owner's representative is present, we'd like to invite them up to the podium. I think that's you. Come on up, please introduce yourself, state your name and whatnot. And then what we'll do is let's give you 5 minutes.
I don't think I'll need
To
that
present?
much, but I appreciate
Okay.
it.
We don't have a line of people behind. us.
Sure,
We
right.
like to try to manage our time. So give you 5 minutes to present. What we'll do is, share with us whatever you want to.
Sure.
And then what we may do is stand by if we have to call you for any questions.
Absolutely. Good evening, board members. Thank you, Jose, for your great presentation. My name is Jeremy Coulter. I'm the homeowner with my wife. This is my lovely family here, brought them for a field trip. We're the homeowners here. My background is I've grown up in Seaside. I love Seaside. It's home. We want to be here for many years. We hope our kids will live near us as well. I've invested in the community with my father on several projects, grew up in construction in the area. We've remodeled many homes in Seaside. And our goal just generally with all of the homes that we've lived in, and this one especially, is just to make the community nicer, to enjoy what we've been blessed with and make it grow, make it nicer and improve on it. I guess I should look at my notes, right? We have a great relationship with our neighbors. We talk with them daily. We got one great letter from a neighbor that the rear stairwell will impact probably most. He's very sympathetic. He thinks it's a great project and was willing to sign a powerful letter hoping that you guys would approve this project. Excuse me. I guess our goal is that we will build it well and that Seaside has some of the best ocean views on the peninsula. I think it actually does have the best. We get all the sunsets. So we just want to enjoy those views and spend lots of time with the family on it. So thank you for your consideration. And I pray that you guys approve the project. So, thanks.
Thank you. All right, at this time, what we'll do is let's go ahead and open it to any other public comment before we bring it back to the dais. If there are any other members of the public who'd like to comment on this item, please either come to the podium or you'll be invited online to do so if you're watching on Zoom.
Amy Nestor, you now have the floor to make your public comment.
I actually have a comment. Where are the setbacks going to be that they intrude onto the property? What side of the home? Hello?
The commissioners can respond after the close of public comment.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any other comments? What we'll do is we'll get somebody up to
I
answer
own
that.
1274 Waring, and I'm afraid this may be intrusive onto my property, looking down into our home. Where the deck is, I'm just wondering how large it would be because it looks right into our bedrooms in the back.
And where is your property relative to?
1274
property?
Waring. My house backs to their property.
Okay, we'll have to get an exhibit up with the planner shortly and we can consider that. Any other comments from you before we move on to the next item or next person?
No, I don't mind the deck. I just don't want it to intrude onto the setbacks onto my property. So he's looking down into it and into my backyard so much.
Understood. Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other comments, Dominique?
At this time, there are no other members of the public that have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Thank you. All right, Jose, would it be possible for you to come back up and I don't know if you can identify which neighbor that is, just so we can see relative. I'm aware that
Maybe,
the western, the deck that's on the western side, which really seems like it's the closest to a neighboring property, that's actually within the setbacks and is allowed. It's the north and the south ones where it would be encroaching into those setbacks a little bit.
Correct.
And not in the entire yard, in part of the yard. So the applicant mentioned that one of his neighbors who would be impacted by that was supportive of the project, but I'd like to, figure out where the Waring Street address is that she was referring to.
So
My best guess, sorry, that if I'm intruding, but I think my best guess is that they're in the right hand corner.
There where that old shed is, that's on the corner.
Yeah.
There's a little detached building. I
There-
think this
that
is. the
doesn't
neighbor.
exist
That
anymore.
doesn't exist anymore.
That's my best guess.
Yeah, our current back deck that we have looks into their yard.
So just to, we're informed, Jerry, I appreciate the comment out there and one thing's more.
I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, yeah.
yeah, it doesn't work. Andy.
Do you know, the city
Oh, the laser does.
at all?
Can't see
There,
it.
it's just down.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Waring should be below.
So-
The street below.
Correct.
Waring is running down right over here.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and so which is the neighbor that you said you
I
had a?
believe, I'm not familiar.
that you
with
spoke with?
specific Addresses, but I believe it's the right hand.
I think that's where we're-
So Will is there, that's correct.
This is Will?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is either this house on the corner
Correct.
or the house
That's
adjacent.
correct. That is
Okay, and this is the frontage. Let me see.
And do you want the mic? The people on Zoom can't hear you.
I apologize.
So, well, thank you for bringing up this exhibit.
You know what?
I'll deal with it. Just, yeah, show this.
So,
Okay, so To address the caller, we believe that your house, the person's house that just called in, is sitting either in this section, the southwest section of your parcel. There's no problems with setbacks in that section at all. We're not asking for a permit for the setbacks in the side, on the side. So the Waring side would be the side setback here. That is fine.
So can you alter, you had a couple of progressions of this image?
Yes. There it is.
So
So the setbacks that we are concerned about for the use permit are in the front of the property. This is the front on Wanda. And at the rear, abutting the single family dwelling parcel back here.
okay, so let's start with the front. So the front setback is 15 feet. And we're simply saying that on the westernmost part of the property, that the deck would be allowed to go up to 9 feet. It's not blocking any of the visibility across the corner of from the streets. And that would be reduced to 9 feet at that location. That doesn't impact the west in so much as, except that it extends out a little further.
Correct.
And then on the rear setback, that is also a 15-foot setback.
This is also 15-foot. The deck is in 6 feet into the 15-foot setback.
Okay.
So it
and-
leaves us with
and
9.
The party immediately to the north. No, that's the south. Immediately to the south is supportive of it. They haven't offered any concerns about the deck extending into that setback.
Correct.
Okay. And then anything Waring is to the west and where that deck is, and I did see, personally, I saw the photos, and that deck kind of sits up above the fence. It kind of looks down on the neighbors. I can understand why the neighbors might have some concern there, but that is compliant. And that's an existing deck that is within those setbacks. So we're not asking for any alterations there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Wait, is there a? I wondered if it looked like, it looked like there was a little deck in the front and the entrance to the houses and the one. Really wasn't a deck in the back, it was just a landing.
Correct.
There is definitely a deck there now.
Okay, did I misstate? I'm sorry.
There's an entryway. It's more of a landing. It's, I guess you can call it a porch on the second story. But if we go to the Google street view, we still have that street view. That'll show the current. I actually do have photos that are just not included in this presentation. But to address the concern on the call, we did send out 300-foot notices way in advance. And so if you were a homeowner, you should have received this notice.
So do we have okay, we're in the street.
Yeah, so if you go,
This is a great example of where we're at now.
yeah, it looks nothing like this now, but if you go to the front, there it is. Just a little. Yeah.
Okay, so I was mistaken. There is not a deck on that side, right?
There is not.
But the deck that would be linking the front to the back would be within the 5-foot setback.
Yes. Yeah, we had long conversations with the building official about that.
And on the, I'm sorry, on the opposing side where the neighbor is receptive, that deck is next to their garage. So that's what I noticed on that one. So
Yeah, it's this side of their house and garage.
right. So that's our goal. Do you have any other
I
questions?
had another question. I'm not sure for this, as it might be for the other organization or anything. But I do notice that in the documents we got, they show the existing house. It do not show those windows where they're just a little bit above ground on them. You can see them over, I guess it would be west of, excuse me, on the north side, facing the street, facing, Wanda. There's some-
On the second,
on the diagram, it shows what it looks like. And from what I can tell, those windows are gonna be under the deck. Based on where the plan placed the deck. So that raises the question, in my mind, is will those windows still be there? Doors, or, is it- the right.
There's a window under the
This
stairs.
is what they're saying. There's one that had existing. Yes, those windows there.
That would be kind of under the stairwell.
That will be under the stairwell. They didn't show up on the diagram that existed. So that's fine. We know they're there, doesn't matter, but it does raise the question of how are those windows going to be effective in the stack?
You want to address this?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Would you like me to come?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And I got a little disjointed, but I want to make sure let's make sure anyone else on it can put out and raise their hand. We have closed the public comment period. Go ahead and answer that question.
Sure, yeah. So the window you're talking about is to a restroom that's downstairs. It was a previous remodel that we have planned and put through the normal channels for permitting process. It's a safety glass window that's obscured. You can't see out of it because it's a restroom. And so my idea for it is we'd much rather have an improved entry that doesn't go right into our living room. This area on the side of the home is there's a stairwell that goes downstairs, and then there's we call it like a study or something, but it basically doesn't have a lot of use. So that'll turn into a mudroom. And so those improvements will be much better for our family than losing out on some of the sunlight that would come through. I think that's the only real disadvantage, because it's an obscured window that you can't see out of.
So that window is just for a bathroom for ventilation.
Correct.
Light. It's not an egress from a bedroom or something where
That's correct,
there's
yeah.
a safety issue if it got obstructed by a staircase.
That's
Okay,
correct.
got it.
Yeah, so there's one you can't see that's directly behind the stairs here now. It's a bedroom window, which our twin boys live in. It's also safety glass and non-egress window. Along the west side of the home, which would be just to the right and around the corner, is the egress window, which won't be impeded at all. Yeah, and I do apologize for that not making the plan. I was focused on the upstairs deck. Right. Sure. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, let's get back on our earlier track and make sure that we have it in the public who might want to comment. Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. You want to extend that invitation again?
Members of the public on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 to make public comment on this item. Chair, no members of the public
Okay.
have wished to make public comment.
Perfect. So seeing that we have no further public comments beyond the one that we received earlier, why don't we close the public comment? Let's bring this back up for discussion, and then we can address any further questions to staffs. And although we've kind of already done some of that. Other commissioners, do we have anything? No? Keith? Well, I have to say I was most concerned about the western part of the deck. And some of the exhibits we got in our package weren't as nice as the exhibits you have on the slideshow. So I really appreciate what we see here. Where, in my opinion, where we're encroaching into the setbacks and where we have the variance, it's very non-impactful. If we were doing that on the west elevation and that was the exception, I'd have real pause or concern about that. But learning what I've learned, I'm actually quite comfortable with it. I think it makes a lot of sense personally. So do we have anybody who wants to make a motion or? We have further debate.
I'll make a motion. I move. Well, would we like to discuss it amongst ourselves first?
Well, that's kind of what we're doing right now. so
Okay,
That's what I'm asking. There wasn't much comment, so I didn't know if we were moving to a motion or not.
personally, I have the one side where there may be some concern, there doesn't appear to be a setback problem. So that's, I don't see how that can be pertinent really to what we're considering in terms of this use permit. In the front, I guess initially when I looked at this, I wondered a bit. I live in this neighborhood and I know that Wanda, while it's not a major thoroughfare, it does get a fair amount of traffic at certain times of day. And there might be more a privacy issue for the owners than anybody else, as far as that front porch being very relatively close to the street. And that I guess one question I have is, how high is the fence part of that deck going to be? That I think would be something you would want to have to give yourself a little more privacy in using that part that's open to the street. People are walking up and down that street all the time. That's a major dog thoroughfare. I mean, you're obviously aware of that. You live there. How high will the deck be?
Do you want me to approach?
Please.
I don't know if there's people online who want to hear. I'm trying to make sure I understand the question correctly. Are you talking about the north side?
It would be the north side, yes, the side facing one,
Yeah,
which is
yes.
much more busy street than the other one.
Right. Yeah. So the north side of the home, it is a busier street. We have an extremely annoying wiener dog that we apologize barks at everyone and try our best to calm down. But the existing fence right now, I believe, is 48 inches, and which I think is the normal height for a fence. We had some nicer shrubs there that kind of helped distract a little bit, but something got them and they all died.
Yeah.
And so I guess our future plans would be to have some deck plants or something that would kind of obscure it a little bit. But as I stated earlier, we know like Julius lives straight across the street from us. We're great friends with him. We talk to him multiple times a week. And the Palmas, which are other neighbors, we're good friends with. And so, I mean, just being out there on a warm day, we say hi to our neighbors. Like that's just who we are. And so for privacy for us, it's not really a big deal. As much as, the benefit of just being a little bit taller. Standing in our front yard, you can see the ocean. So having that deck is going to be just, a beautiful outside living space.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No,
I
yeah.
just raised that issue because if it were an issue for you,
Mhm.
then I think you'd have some problems being that close to the street.
Yeah.
I know that there's a house maybe 2 blocks up going up the hill to
Mhm.
the east that also has an outdoor deck that faces the front. And
Yeah.
they put some shrubbery up and it has quite a bit of privacy.
Yeah. We're not opposed to landscaping it in a way that's doesn't hurt anyone, but
Yeah.
it helps us.
Yeah.
And we haven't quite we've thought of a couple of things that we could do, but not 100% what we will absolutely. But also addressing your comment, sitting in our kitchen now, I can look out one of our windows and see a deck.
Mhm.
It's probably the same one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And in our community, there's quite a few of them that have some pretty good views. And so we're just trying to be alongside them and enjoy it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's awful quiet up here tonight.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. if you
Okay,
wanna move
go
it
ahead.
on. I move that we approve use permit UP 2207 and Board of Architectural Review application number bar 22-12 for Jeremy Coulter, the property owner, and then the rest of the information that's here on the agenda.
I second that.
All right. All in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right, seeing no dissensions, we have a unanimous approval. And this is the point where I say that appeal may be submitted in writing within 7 calendar days from the date of this meeting. The appeal shall state the pertinent facts, and the basis for the appeal shall be accompanied by the required filing fee. Since this was approved by both the Board of Architectural Review and the Planning Commission, the appeals will be made to the City Council. So that said, congratulations, your project is approved, and we will move along to the next item of business. And that item of business, sorry, give me a second to move to it, is all right, Board of Architecture Review Application Number BAR 2211. Seaside Acquisition Group is the property owner and applicant requesting design review approval of the plant palette and planting layout for the final landscape plan and the final exterior lighting plan for the construction of a 330-room Grand Hyatt Hotel on the Seaside Resort project site. We'll turn this over to staff for a presentation.
It's working. I'm waiting to see if the okay. This application, this is a continuation of what the planning commission reviewed the architectural design, the site modifications for the new Grand Hyatt Hotel. That would be the hotel component of the Seaside Resort. And prior to the grading permit, part of the conditions of approval that were included for the Seaside Resort were that for the hotel component that they would return with a planting scheme layout, which includes the palette and the final lighting plans. The plans that we reviewed on the 26th gave you a cursory review of what the landscaping ideas were. And the landscape architect is again here this evening to kind of go over that and kind of show you any refinements that are made to the planting layout. And then we also will have via Zoom, we have the lighting consultant for the ownership that would give us the overview of the lighting plan. Just so for the benefit of the public who may not know more about the project, this is the Seaside Resort development, has the hotel component, which is the former driving range on the golf course. And then surrounding that under construction now, we have the 125 single family homes that are under construction that are all bordering right now along Monterey Road. That is to the west of the hotel site. And then we have construction occurring for grading on the Co Avenue side for homes at that location. And then there's also a timeshare component, which is across the road on McClure away from the hotel component, which has no development occurring at this time. And then we all have the surrounding golf course around the area. The project did have a final EIR in 2005, and we did do an addendum to the final EIR to approve the last revisions that we took action on October 26th. This is the location of the Seaside Resort area. It's within the former Fort Ord area of Seaside, and kind of give people a perspective. You've got on the lower left corner is the Seaside Highlands. As you proceed upward, you'll have Seaside Middle School, that it would be to the bottom right. In the middle there, we have the Seaside Resort Golf Course, which then is surrounded by the Fort Ord housing areas along Monterey Road that wraps around also to the west and to the north. Next slide. So here we have the layout of the component. So the component for the Seaside Hotel is on that circle. I've highlighted in yellow. These are the current residential areas, and they are all under construction except for the upper right corner, which is no development occurring on that phase at this point in time. And then you've got the Highlands and the Seaside Middle School. So this gives you, we have an overlay of the hotel layout that would occur. We have the timeshare again up on the upper portion. And we have some site plans that kind of give a little bit better, will give a more perspective in terms of the landscaping. But I want to give you perspective on the layout of the hotel, which again was approved on October 26th. Next slide. So we have the site plan. At that point in time, we did have the trees that are going to be, would be planted on the site, and the applicant for the landscape, I'm about ready to turn it over to the landscaper next, because then I just want to give you the perspective that what we did have on the 26th was the trees, and the trees were probably the primary element of the environmental of the EIR. That was the key point, and there would be approximately 80 trees being removed. that surrounding the site. They're a mixture of cypress, oak, and other varieties. And the landscape architect can explain to you the planting will be much more greater than what is being removed. And if you've gone to the site, much of the trees that are being removed that are surrounding the golf course are probably not in the best of condition. So these are not prime trees, but the trees that will remain along the adjoining fairways are required as part of the conditions that the hotel not be any taller than the existing mature trees that surround the site. And much of the trees that you will see that are being removed on the perimeter for the grading of the hotel site, they were within a former driving range. So there wasn't much irrigation that was being took for those trees. And some of them there's a few oaks that have actually split in that area. And that's on the southern portion where the roadway would be circling around back to the new parking lot on the west of the golf course. I'm sorry, the west of the hotel, and to the clubhouse would be that one building that you see on the far left side. So I think at this point, here were the elevations. Just give you perspective on the north, which is along McClure Way. We have the east, that's facing what would be facing toward General Gym. The south would be facing the golf course fairway that would be towards Co. And then the west elevation is what would be facing the parking lot area. Next slide. And then this is the section. One thing that I will denote, and this image kind of pertain more also to the lighting plan that we'll get to after the landscape presentation, is that the housing that is on the far west of the site, it's well below the elevation of the hotel, and there's like 4 or 5 fairways that are between the hotel and the lower housing. So as far as any concerns that may be of glare or other aspects, and the lighting plan will go into depth in terms of the light candles are at a minimum, what we needed for the site. But just give you perspective in terms of how far away the housing is to the west. So at this point, I'm going to let the landscaper kind of give you an overview of the landscape plan and its layout. We can.
Is that the light? Oh, to go through? Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Hi, my name is Ash Hoden. I work for Burton Studio. Patrick Baldwin is one of the partners at Burton Studio, and he was meant to be here, but he's feeling ill and he's online. So if need be. So that's my introduction to who I am.
Can we just have you step
Yes,
forward to that?
yes.
Only because the people online can't hear.
So to start off with, the purpose of this presentation really is to kind of go through the concept, the framework of what we're putting together for the planting, particularly shrub planting. But it does include palettes that are comprehensive of everything that we're showing in the different zones. And so this upfront slide puts the resort in context. So along the western edge on General Jim Moore, all the areas that are shown in color show the extent of the planting that goes with it. So there is some planting on General Jim Moore that ties in with the existing cypress and provides some screening from the road. But in general, the overall context of the site, there's cypress really providing kind of a veiled edge, both on the eastern side and on the southern edge. And then within the resort itself, within the central property, there's an additional row of cypress on the eastern edge of the building itself. And all of those are protected, and really the bulk of the tree planting is existing. But we are adding back a significant number of trees. Offhand, it's roughly like 75 cypress being added back and 35 oak. And then there are some additional plants that we can get into, but this is really just to show the resort in context. And it's a diagram that we've developed as a part of our scope that we're bringing the project forward, and it's to help coordinate with pricing and just the infrastructure that will go with planting. So that's why we wanted to kind of start with it. Here, the higher level picture of it. Yeah, is it possible to? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So zooming in, this just gives a closer look of the resort part itself. And this is a more detailed planting. The colored areas are representative of specific plants, and it's part of our it will need to be priced. And so it's part of our exercise for advancing the idea itself. But what we wanted to show was how the broader swaths of planting on the edge move into being more intimate spaces as you get closer to the resort. So this diagram really starts to get into the concept itself, and it breaks the site down into different zones. And so overall, the idea is that there's a series of interlocking meadows, basically. So we have an upland meadow, a lowland meadow, and then as you move into the resort itself, there's amenity spaces, there's a spa garden, and then toward the bottom edge, there's a what we're calling a riparian meadow, and then around the perimeter is Festuca rubra exclusively, which is also on the language of General Jim Moore. We understand that Festuca rubra and cypress are common, so we're carrying that out to that parking lot there, and then it comes into the site and surrounds the site, and then we move into these different meadows that lead into the core of the resort and become more of a softer broadleaf palette. And there's three main plants, there are three main trees that we're using, which are the cypress, oak, and then olive, that are brought more into the court, the central court. And beyond that, there are a couple accent trees here and there, but the main tree palette are those three. And then the images along the bottom are characteristic of each of the zones. So the upland meadow is characterized by swaths of different grasses. The way you would see, sort of like on the hillside in California, you come through and you see the grasslands on the higher levels. And as you get down in and there's more water in the channels in the lowland, then that becomes a little bit more diverse and mixed. And so the next picture over shows the lowland meadow, which is a field of similar grasses to what you'd find in the upland, but then they're accentuated with plants like salvia or lavender, different, that add sort of like the texture of the lower levels of the California hills. And then moving in the spa garden, it shows that we're moving to softer plants with broader leaves, and they have different texture and character. And we'll get into that in further slides. A rooftop garden, I can speak to the detail of that, but the character is similar of grassy California landscape. The riparian meadow in our plan, you can the image on second from the right on the bottom is along the southern edge of the site, and is meant to, it also serves a dual purpose of water quality. So the water quality basins along that bottom edge are being treated as a riparian meadow. And then there's an image on the right that is related to the event spaces, and I can speak to that coming forward, but in certain areas, the meadow landscape can then break to just a singular plant, and that idea is what's shown there to create sort of an elegant folding down a hillside near event spaces. Do you mind going to the next picture? So starting with the upland meadow, as you come into the hotel, you're on the uphill portion of the site, and the topography rolls from the upper right corner sort of down to the lower left corner, so kind of northeast to southwest. And as you arrive, it's characteristic of, it's the character of the upland meadow is essentially swaths of these different grasses with selective moments where we've added in shrubs like salvia or echium, something like that. Echium is typically a screen shrub, but salvia it starts to accent the grasses, and then as meadows are kind of overlapping, that the salvia will then fold into the lowland meadow, but in more, so it's a series of compression and dispersal. You'll have areas where certain plants collect and then other areas where they're looser. And so they kind of tie in with each other. And then as you get into the hotel core, we are then bringing in roses and in shadier areas, the ferns. And that would kind of link then in with other portions of the site that are nearby, but accentuating key moments within the meadow palette. And so coming around the lowland palette, essentially what you have is a field that comes from the upper area. So a Carex divulsa could pull around and form the field for the lowland meadow that is then accentuated with lavender, pennisetum, the lygeum, spartograph is tied with olives. That's a full field. And is basically just characteristic of the fact that there's more water in the lowlands. And so it's grasses mixed with a variety of shrubs in select areas. And then moving from the lowland, we'll go into the amenity spaces. And you can see that like the lavandula will be spotted in the meadow. And then as you get into the amenity spaces, that plant will form some borders, and then you get deeper in and they just overlap one to the next. And so this is now the amenity garden and the spa gardens that are the central core of the hotel itself. And so this is where the grassland sort of transitions to a broader leaf palette, softer materials, more color, more seasonal variety, smell, particularly with adding in, this is where we bring in additional trees just selectively in areas where people gather. So near fire pits or spas, we'll have trees like that create the more sensual environment that you have in the interior space of a resort. We're showing a hedge in areas that in this area because of in the pool, it's a good way to frame some of the spaces behind the cabanas and then screen other portions that you screen the pool from other portions of the site so it's not as visible. We have anemone, which is another flowering plant that has really nice lush leaves. And so, and the Chondropetalum as well, which is a very watery plant. And so you'll have clusters of that near the pool, but it's also used in the lowland meadows and elsewhere, but it's just in lesser quantities. And then moving up to the roof, we wanted to just celebrate the connection to the sky. It's a very, you're 5 floors up and you have this beautiful view of the sky and the ocean. And so we created a border that's lighter in tone, more of the silvery Santolina, and then flowers as well and textures. So Erigeron will flower year round. The silver bush lupine has the color and the silvery foliage. And then in the central area, it's connected to a restaurant and then also just an event area. And so we gave it a little bit more of a formal treatment on the middle part, which shows olive trees in containers and then shrub olives, so little olives in containers that surround a faux turf lawn. And then Fragaria anensis, so ornamental strawberry, would be underneath the olives in a raised container and gives a nod to the fact that this is a dining area as well. But they are known for having flowers as well. They're not edible, but anyhow, so that was the approach here. And then there's another uninhabited green roof that would be potentially planted with grasses, but may end up being faux turf. And then this is kind of the last area that we have that shows the perimeter that I spoke of earlier. And really what it is the border of Festuca rubra. It ties in with the landscape on General Jim Moore, and it helps to create a seam that splices the hotel in with the surrounding golf context with a singular grass that's native and will go well in all seasons. And then you can see in there the slightly darker green that's within the lower edge is that's where we're calling it the riparian meadow. And we've worked with a seed company to establish a hydroseed mix that would go well there, using natives like the Schultzia, the poppy. That would also be on the roof, but could tolerate not being irrigated in moments where it's flooded. So really that covers the overall concept. I have some slides that get into water requirements and tree removal if we need. And I can get into more detail about planting as well, but the overall concept is very judicious with water and relates back to the California landscape through that grasses. Mhm.
Thank you. Rick, is there any more on your presentation before we?
Moved on to the lighting, or do you want to?
Okay, so we're gonna.
Do you want to hear we'll hold the lighting before, then I think you should hear that, and then you
Yeah,
should
that's fine.
then have your discussion.
Okay, so the presentation, that's what I was getting at. There's still another.
Yeah,
section.
there's a quick component on the lighting.
Perfect.
And so this is where Jesse and Jeremy can probably open. We'll let him open and introduce any of his team that would provide the information on the lighting. Sorry, we have the team who are from Midwest Florida back east, so they are going to be providing their presentation via Zoom. And so Jeremy Holland is the representative for the ownership, and he has a team that is available this evening that will be giving us assistance on the presentation of the lighting plan.
Perfect. And when they give us the presentation, I'm going to guess that they don't have to get too deep in the technical weeds on it for us. Let's give us the overview, and then as we might have.
Yeah, what I can give you some quick overview on the lighting plan is that it will be within the parking lot, the circular roadways, and one of the emphasis that will be that they can explain on the interior courtyard that there's going to be minimal lighting that's going to be within the interior area of the courtyard that you saw as you go from the parking lot into the hotel. And there would be no lights on the balconies. The lighting would be within the interior of the building that would wash out onto the balcony. So that's going to kind of figure that would minimize anybody who's down low or out or from afar looking up and seeing a sea of lights on any of the balconies. And they do have dimming to dim the lights in the later evenings when there's less activity within the hotel and parking lot. Yeah.
Do we have them lined up?
I think you can go to my PowerPoint that I had, and I have the lighting slides or the site plans for the lighting in case they want to reference any of those slides. Yes. But if you go back to my PowerPoint where we stopped on the landscaping, there is some lighting sheets that go past the landscaping. So that's going to go, yeah, we're going to go past all the landscaping. You can go back one slide. And back one more, back another. Thank you, moving forward. Go one more slide. Another slide. Keep going. One more, please. Keep going. Yeah, here. Yeah, you want to keep moving forward? I'll tell you when to stop. You're going backwards. No, I said you go. Sorry. No. Back. Yeah, right there. We'll start. Yeah, we'll start from that.
All right, DLR Group, you now have the floor to make comments.
Great, thank you. This is Jesse Smith. I'm the lead lighting designer on the project with DLR Group. Jeremy is also on, and he'll jump in if there's anything needed kind of beyond just the lighting side. And Rick, thank you for pulling up those plans. So perfect. Just to kind of generally set the scene for our intent with the property. The intent is to preserve the views and preserve the natural, the landscaping that Burton team has really put together, really maintain kind of the natural pristine atmosphere around the property. And so to that end, our goal is not to light every area. It's to let the natural area remain natural where possible, and to highlight the areas where we have a safety concern, or we have folks, kind of traversing from one area to another. So our main zones are obviously right up against the hotel. That's where we have our brighter light levels as you are, being led into the hotel, as you are entering and exiting those main entry points. And then the further away you get from the hotel, the less bright we want to be. We want it to fade off and go into that natural landscape that I was mentioning. So we have our primary entries and exits. We have kind of our areas around the pool and some of the event terraces where we have some light level requirements we want to meet there, stairs, things like that for egress. We need to make sure we hit all those. And then beyond that, we have walkways for pedestrians. Those are all lit, as you can see here on the screen in the upper right. Those are lit with low-level bollards, so 36 inches in height, really no spread beyond the pedestrian walkway zone. Then within the kind of main drive areas where we have guests frequenting those areas, we have a more decorative light pole that's 18 feet in height. So we don't have any light sources above that 18-foot mark. Everything is dark sky compliant. So we have no light emitted above 90 degrees. So we're really, again, limiting that within these areas. We do have some limited tree uplighting that is confined to immediately adjacent to the hotel. And those are very low wattage fixtures that are just meant to highlight the lovely landscaping that Ash and the Burton team have put together. The other areas for the two images on the left there, those poles are in our kind of areas where we've got parking. So the main parking lot to the west, as well as the overflow parking that is primarily for staff. And those poles, the double-headed and the single-headed, are in those locations. So here you can see the parking lot. This plan does not show all of the tree locations. That shows up on landscape, but we have carefully coordinated all of our pole locations with the myriad of trees that the Burton team has within this area. So it's our recommendation to you all and our conversations with Rick that we've really done the best that we can to make sure we've addressed safety and security for the resort, but also maintaining the natural light, lack of light in a lot of these natural areas surrounding the resort. And that indeed will limit any spread to those surrounding properties. Our goal is to not see any direct light source from any of the properties around the resort. You will see light, illuminated walls, or elements that are lit, but you will not see a light source. Therefore, glare will be pretty much non-existent. So I don't want to, like you said, don't want to get too much into the details and into the weeds, so to speak. But hopefully that kind of gives an overview of our intent with the lighting plans.
Jesse, could you talk about the dimming aspect that can be done?
Absolutely. So the three pole fixtures, the ones that are in our parking lots and along our main drive, are intended to have controls built into the fixtures that allows the facility to dim those fixtures during off-peak hours. So for example, that could mean that after 10 p.m., all of the primary roadways and parking lots dim down to 60% of the initial light output. And then after midnight, we dim down to say 30%, 40%. All of it is completely customizable to the staff in the hotel. It'll all happen automatically. So if there were ever kind of an issue that needed to be addressed, there needed to be a little bit more light for after hours, or there needed to be a little bit less light. They're finding they're not having as many people out in that parking lot, say from 8 to 10 p.m. They could lower the lights even more, and that will help limit the little bit of light that we do already have. It'll help limit that even further. So we've tried to build in a lot of flexibility with the system to be able to address any potential concerns that arise as the facility is operated through the years.
I think that would.
Does that conclude the overall
Yeah,
presentation?
And just one more, this is the image of the pool area. So we were at the parking lot. This is coming down to the southern end. This is where the pool would be. And then as you traverse on that roadway, that's the service road that circles around to the parking lot, up back to the main entrance. That would, as you're going up that road, that takes you back to the porte cochere that we saw that was at the main entry. And the porte cochere is probably the brightest area. And again, that's on the east side, which
Correct.
has less minimal impact to any of the adjoining properties that are crossed in the Ord housing. That's across General Gym to the east. You've got several fairways, and the level of the roadway is even below the elevation of what would be where that porte cochere would be. So there's really less, so more, the more sensitivity is going to would be to the west. And so the brighter lighting would be on the east side of the building.
So if that concludes the sort of the entire staff proposal, what I'd like to do is open up to commissioners to ask questions of the applicant's team for starters. When we conclude with those questions, then we'll go to a public comment period. And then, we may come back to you guys, but just since we got you on the line now, let's do that. Let me start with Commissioner Went.
I just had one question on the landscaping. There's a sheet, there's a page in our packet that is headed water usage worksheets.
Oh, yes, yes.
And I apologize I probably should understand these, but you're making a distinction between the potable and the recycled.
Yes.
My understanding was everything up there was going to be recycled. So if you could just focus on the left-hand side of that sheet, it says interior landscape, define that for me so I understand what that is. And then why are we even using any potable water for that kind of situation? Some of it's rotor irrigation. So I'm just a little surprised that it's going to be potable.
Yes, the interior spaces, we have a diagram. I can
Yeah,
pull it up.
If we can pull that up,
if you
it'd
don't
help
mind.
me.
I think it's the last page and the second to last page.
Thank you.
There you go.
If you step back one, I can show on the plan. So the central area that's the strongest green, that's the extent of the potable. And primarily it's where the people will be. And the intention was to avoid having the signs. So if you're at a wedding or using the resort, you would not have people posting in front of the signs that just say that it's a reclaimed water use. It was mainly about the aesthetics of identifying it.
Which I don't care about this. No, I'm just kidding. I care about the water.
And so the one aspect of that central area is that would all be drip.
Well, that's my question. So if we can go to the next slide.
Yes, and I do want to sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I want to point out one thing. The one you have, there was a typo. If it was the one that was sent before.
Okay,
And so we've changed the number in it's the bottom table. So it shows a reduction in the number of water, the amount of water that we had previously.
And the project there's 6.9 acre feet, because this was in 2005, which the reclaimed water wasn't a thing at that point.
right.
And so the project does have 6.9 acre feet of potable water, and we are much below that.
We're much below what, yeah.
So you're saying there was approved back in 2005 that we're going to be using potable?
But we have conditions that indicate that once the reclaimed water is available and online, that they will be doing dual purple pipe, so that they will have the ability to tap back into that when the reclaimed water is available.
Right, but this chart, at least as I'm understanding it, is saying going forward, you're going to be using in these, and again, that's what I want you to explain to me.
Yes.
There's potable water landscape area, LA, there's special landscape area, SLA, and there's special landscape area active usage.
Okay, yes.
All of those, as I understand it, are going to be potable.
No, there's the left-hand chart is strictly related to the central potable area. And the special landscape use, there's a calculation that's the state maximum applied, the MAWA. And then the bottom is the actual. And that's showing Paspalum turf, 10,000 square feet. And some of that there's a potential to reduce that using faux turf, like on the roof deck. But in the use areas, we would ideally still use Paspalum, but so the diagram here, the chart here just spells out how water for shrubs are calculated, how the turf water is calculated, and how it matches with the state allowances.
Just seems strange for us to be doing turf first off, and then seems strange to be.
But it's not a grass turf, right? You can explain the difference, what you're talking about.
We have very small sections of lawn that would be needed for like yoga or weddings, that kind of use, but it's a minimal amount. And the remainder of the site is, the remainder of the site. Sorry.
Convince him, you're probably okay.
It really is like, there's one lawn area that's near the pool, that's an event lawn, where the activities could spill out to, like if they had yoga classes, they would have a space to do yoga. And then on the alternate side near the ballroom, there's a lawn outside of the ballroom where people could spill out and they could have staged events there. Aside from that, it's all grasses. The whole extent around it is very native and adaptive heavy. And even the calculations that we used assumed a mixture of moderate to low water use plants that is probably even I mean, it's much more skewed toward the moderate than what our palette and our approach has been. And so we just selectively chose certain areas where we'd want to be able to feed the hotel uses.
I'm just really uncomfortable using potable water anywhere on this for that. I understand the signage, I understand all that aesthetics, but we got to recycle water. We should be using it. That's all I got.
Commissioner Dodson?
Yeah. With regard to the design of the foliage around the site, it looks great to me. Just one question came to mind, and I don't know if this is even a consideration, but I did notice there were a lot of plants that had purple flowers and things like that. And there are parts of the peninsula, specifically Pacific Grove and parts of Monterey, where the deer just, they have that stuff for lunch. And I'm just wondering if, I don't know if there are any deer out there. I know there's no deer around me where I live in Seaside, but it's much more dense. I'm just wondering, did you look at that possible consideration when choosing some of these plants?
We looked at it more from the perspective of creating habitat and having sort of these like pollinator species,
Yeah.
that aspect of it. I think if there are specific plants that the deer prioritize over others, we could adjust the specific selections for certain areas. It could also be part of a maintenance program where the certain areas are ideally controlled somehow, but
Yeah. I mean, as I said, it may not be an issue at
Yeah.
all. I mean, there may be no deer out there, but as far as I know, I've never seen them out there, but they could be. They're there.
yeah,
So if you're spending a lot of money, putting these plants in, you hate to see them, just be eaten up.
understood. Yeah.
Commissioner Lomega? Commissioner Madrigal? All right, I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
When we saw the presentation the first time, I think one of the few comments that I had where I was hoping for more was maybe some tree planting in the large parking lot between the hotel and the golf clubhouse. What I noticed, well, the lighting consultant mentioned that they're coordinating with you on light pole locations and tree locations in the parking lot. The small parking lot that's overflow out by General Jim Moore, the diagrams we received show both the trees and the light posts. And I'm just wondering if any trees are included in any of the island spaces in the large parking lot. I understand that.
The large parking lot we had, we've created diamonds
Yes.
between spots, and it's a whole
Great.
almost grove of olive trees.
Okay, perfect. So that's what I was
Yeah.
hoping for, but I hadn't seen an illustration. And so that was my first question.
Mhm.
And then the other question I had, I think is more for the lighting consultant. I noticed that most of the lighting is 2,700K. There's a little bit at 3,000K, but then you have a handful of lights at 3,500K, and that light temperature is going to be really stark. I'm just wondering if that was intended, because the 2,700 Kelvin light temperature is very warm. It's very inviting. And when we start getting up over 3,000, it starts to diverge towards a starker color. And I also noticed that those same fixtures are the ones that have an 80 CRI, which not real attractive. Whereas the rest of them are 90 CRI, which is good. So that's for our lighting guy, maybe that he can address that. Other than that, I mean, I thought the lighting concepts were really nice.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And great topics. I love talking about color temperature. The bottom of the luminaire schedule talks specifically of the site fixtures, and those are almost all 3,000 Kelvin. Actually, I think they are all listed as 3,000 Kelvin. Within the guest rooms themselves, that is where we have a lot of 2,700 Kelvin, and a lot of the public spaces are 2,700 Kelvin and 3,000 Kelvin. The 3,500 Kelvin that you mentioned is strictly back of house, elevator pits, mechanical spaces, spaces like that where just a little bit of extra lumens are needed. We kind of went that direction. It's actually kind of hard to find some of those really utilitarian fixtures in the warmer color temperatures. So that's why we have that slight difference in some of those mechanical, electrical basement spaces.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, any more questions, guys? All right, at this time, what we're going to do is open this up to public comment. We don't have anybody here in the audience. So Dominique, if you'd invite anybody who's online.
Members of the public wishing to make public comment on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're calling from a phone. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment on this item.
Thank you. Then we'll close the public comment period and bring this back up to the commissioners. Do we have any further comments from the commissioners on the landscaping and the lighting? Seeing none, we close discussion. Do we want to entertain a motion?
Okay.
Go for it.
I move to approve
application number BAR 22-11. Approval of the plant palette and planting layout for the final landscape plan and the final exterior lighting plan for the construction of a 330 room Grand Hyatt Hotel on the Seaside Resort project site located at 1 McClure Way.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we have a unanimous approval. At this point, I share that an appeal may be submitted in writing within 7 calendar days from the date of this meeting. The appeal shall state the pertinent facts and the basis for the appeal and shall be accompanied by the required fee. Since this was a Board of Architectural Review application, the appeal would come to the Planning Commission, which we're here as well. So I guess, does that mean that they can appeal further to the council if there's appeal?
Well, it would, any appeal would go to the council.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it goes to the council. So that's being stated. We'll move on to the next item of business, which is, do we have any reports from commissioners? I would just note that I think they're trying, but the work that's being done on the golf course off of Co Avenue, they're not doing a real good job with their containment of dirt on site. Co is a muddy mess and they've got street sweepers up there, but I mean, they're literally like cleaning a film of dirt off Co Avenue almost on a daily basis. So I don't know if they're, if their construction entrance, the riprap and their, they have the grate for the tires. They're just kind of doing a lousy job. So just a heads up to staff.
Basically, they're tracking mud into the right of way.
They're tracking mud into the right of way in a big way, and it's going about quarter mile up and down the road in each direction. And they're, I think, running street sweepers daily, and it's still not, doing a good job. So just for what it's worth. But as it rains, obviously that if that's not clean, that's, and that's the other thing. The storm drain inlets up and down Co are not protected. So they don't have filtration or gravel bags around them. So if it rains and there's mud on that street and it's running down to the nearest catch basin, they're not keeping the silt out of the storm drain system. All right. Anything else, guys? Reports from staff? None? All right. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Anybody second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.